Hello, everyone, and welcome to English Pod. My name is Marco.
My name is Catherine, and today we have a new lesson in our series about interviewing for a new job. This is, of course, at the elementary level.
That's right. So this is part 4 of our interview series. Remember, we are taking a look each week at giving you tips and also the proper language for when you have an interview in English. And on this occasion, we're going to talk about our work experience.
Okay, you'll remember we talked a little bit about educational experience and educational background. Well, today is all about your last couple of jobs.
All right, so I think we should just listen to the dialogue for the first time, and we'll be back in a bit with language takeaway.
Right, Rebecca. Now I see that after graduating from university, your first job was...
for a local paper in York called the York Herald. Actually, I started with them as an intern. I was really keen on getting some experience in journalism, and this seemed like a good first step.
Certainly. And after your internship?
They seemed impressed and offered me a position as a junior local news reporter. I ended up staying 2 years there, actually. I was in charge of the sports news section of the newspaper. I really enjoyed it there, and it really helped me build my skills.
Yes, I see. But you decided to leave them in 2006, right?
Yes, that's right. My husband and I moved to London, and so I managed to find a position with a national newspaper based in London.
The London Weekly, right?
Yes. In some ways it was a step down from my previous job, but it did offer me much better prospects for the future.
All right, we're back. So now we've picked out a couple of key words, and we're going to take a look at those now on Language Takeaway.
Language takeaway.
So, Marco, a lot of people don't start out as a professional with a job. They have something else first. What is this?
That's right. A very popular way to begin your work experience. You become an intern, or you work as an intern.
Okay, so the name of the job, we could say, is intern. I'm an intern, or he's an intern at my company.
Exactly. So usually interns work at a company. Usually they're not paid. And or if they are, it's a very, very little pay. And the purpose of an internship, or to work as an intern, is to gain experience.
That's right. So it's basically like a study opportunity for a job that you know you want. I could be an intern at a media company, and I could learn all about media, but it's not really a full job.
Exactly. And usually it serves as an opportunity to maybe continue working at that company in a full-time job. So you become an intern, and the noun or what you are doing is called an internship.
So I'm an intern, but what I have is an internship.
Right.
It's like saying I have a job. I have an internship, but I am an intern.
Exactly. All right, so we've covered those 2 words. Now, let's move on to when she's describing her work experience in the York Herald, and she described it as a very good first step.
Okay, so a first step, you think about your foot, your step, you're moving. It means the very first thing you do when you're heading in some direction.
Right, and professionally, I guess your first steps are maybe becoming an intern.
Right, or you could say my first step was working in the mail room at this big movie studio, but later I became, famous movie producer.
Exactly. So that's kind of like the way that you begin your professional life. And, then they started talking about the newspapers, and actually Rebecca was offered a position as a junior local news reporter.
Okay, so junior means usually lower ranking or not experienced. Someone who is just starting out. And of course, after junior, we have senior.
Right.
So a senior news reporter is someone who's worked for many, many years as a reporter.
Usually, I guess, a junior news reporter would make less money than a senior news reporter.
Exactly. You could also say junior executive or senior executive.
Junior manager.
These are ways of describing length of experience. And in this case, she's junior, but what kind of job does she have? Well, she is a news reporter for local issues.
Okay, so she's a local news reporter. Now, what exactly does that mean if you're a local news reporter or for local issues?
Well, if I live in Chicago and I'm a local news reporter, I only write or report the news about Chicago.
Okay.
It's a way of describing the things in my area. So it's the opposite of our next phrase, national. news reporter.
Okay, so if you are a national news reporter or a national manager of maybe a company, then that means that you oversee things in the whole country.
That's right. So local is my city or my county, but in the case of national, we're talking about the whole country. Nation, national. So national is an adjective. But we could even go further than this. What if I am a reporter and I talk about foreign countries? I talk about France and South Africa and even Iceland.
Then I guess you would be an international news reporter.
Exactly.
And I guess also at the executive level, you can have an international marketing manager, right?
That's right. International marketing manager, national marketing manager. These are very important ways to divide work, to say he is the international manager, here's the national manager. This tells you the kind of the size of this person's job.
Exactly. Okay. So now more or less you know how these jobs can be divided: junior, senior, national, local, etc. So I think we should go back to the dialogue. Let's listen to this dialogue again, and we'll be back in a bit.
Right, Rebecca. Now I see that after graduating from university, your first job was...
For a local paper in York called the York Herald. Actually, I started with them as an intern. I was really keen on getting some experience in journalism, and this seemed like a good first step.
Certainly. And after your internship?
They seemed impressed and offered me a position as a junior local news reporter. I ended up staying 2 years there, actually. I was in charge of the sports news section of the newspaper. I really enjoyed it there, and it really helped me build my skills.
Yes, I see. But you decided to leave them in 2006, right?
Yes, that's right. My husband and I moved to London, and so I managed to find a position with a national newspaper based in London.
The London Weekly, right?
Yes. In some ways it was a step down from my previous job, but it did offer me much better prospects for the future.
All right, so now let's start with a couple of phrases and phrasal verbs on Fluency Builder.
Fluency Builder.
Okay, in today's dialogue, we heard a lot of really wonderful phrases, Marco. Some of them are ways of making your experiences sound better, more professional even. For example, this first one, Rebecca's talking about her first job in New York, and she says, I was in charge of the sports news section. In charge of.
So that phrase, I was in charge of, or to be in charge of, what does this describe?
This describes responsibility. Basically, she's saying, I was responsible for, or I had to manage the sports news section. She's taking credit for this job that was important.
Okay, so this is a key phrase because this is the typical phrase that you use to describe your responsibilities or to describe what you did in your previous job position or your previous job.
So, right, I could ask you, when you were in marketing, what were you in charge of?
Right, and then you say, well, I was in charge of, and then you explain your responsibilities or what you did.
I was in charge of our national accounts, or I was in charge of the local news.
Exactly. So this is a very simple phrase. Just remember it. I was in charge of, and then you can start explaining what were your responsibilities, what you did in your previous job. All right, moving on now towards the end of that paragraph, Rebecca says that, well, being in charge of the sports news section was really fun, and it really helped her build my skills. It really helped me build my skills.
So to build your skills, or in this case, I build my skills, means that I have some skills, but maybe they're not really developed. Maybe, I just finished college. I want more experience. Well, in that time during my first job, I build my skills. I become better at writing or having interviews, things like that.
Exactly. So when you build your skills, you kind of improve your abilities or you gain more experience. All right. And another interesting phrase coming up here when Rebecca talked about moving to London with her husband, she said, I managed to find a position with a national newspaper.
Okay, so I managed to, or you could say to manage to do something. This is a really interesting phrase because it's another way of saying to be able to, or to succeed at something.
Okay, so don't confuse it with manager or to manage people. That is also correct. Obviously, it exists. But to manage to do something is to, as you said, to be able to do something.
Right. So, for example, I was running really late yesterday and I had a ticket for a train at 5 o'clock. I thought I would miss the train, but I managed to get to the train on time. That means I was able to get on the train on time.
Exactly. Okay, so you managed to find a job. I managed to get to the train on time. I was able to. All right, and towards the end, Rebecca talked about her job at the London Weekly, and she described it as a step down from my previous job.
Okay, is this a good thing or a bad thing, Marco?
A step down in something is a bad thing. It's to reduce in level or to decrease.
Okay, so basically she's saying, listen, I had this really great job in York, and I took a new job in London, and the new job, it wasn't as good in many ways, because maybe she had less responsibility, or maybe it paid less. So this is a way of saying it wasn't as good as my last job.
Okay, so her new job was a step down from her previous job.
You could say, I think his new girlfriend's a bit of a step down, if you know what I mean.
Exactly. So usually you're comparing, right?
That's right.
You're making a comparison between something from the past to now.
Exactly.
Okay, so a step down. Why don't we go back and listen to the dialogue for the very last time, and we'll be back to talk to you in a bit.
Let me ask you something. Have you ever looked at a job description and thought, wow, they are definitely not looking for me? And then 2 minutes later thought, well, maybe they could be. This is the story of a man who did exactly that. A man named Ethan. And like many disasters in life, it all started with a CV and a little imagination. Ethan wasn't lazy. That's important to say. He was smart, curious, and very good at sounding professional. He knew how to use confident words, strong verbs, and impressive phrases. The problem was simple. His real experience didn't match his ambition. So one night, sitting alone with a laptop, a cold cup of coffee, and a growing sense of panic about his future, Ethan opened his CV. He stared at it for a long time. 2 years of customer support. Basic Excel skills. Assisted with reports. He sighed. Then he did something small. Very small. He changed assisted with reports to prepared analytical reports. It didn't feel like lying. It felt like upgrading. That one small change gave him confidence. Confidence is dangerous because confidence whispered, if I can do this, I can do more. So he kept going. Basic Excel skills became advanced Excel proficiency. Customer support became client relationship management. He paused, his heart beat a little faster. Then he added something bold, something shiny, something completely untrue. Led cross-functional projects in a fast-paced environment. Ethan leaned back in his chair and smiled. The CV looked amazing. He looked amazing on paper. Within days, something happened that both excited and terrified him. An email arrived. Subject: interview invitation. A real company, a serious position, a job he absolutely was not ready for. He read the email 3 times, then once more out loud, just to be sure. His hands were shaking, but he told himself, relax, interviews are just conversations. That night, he started preparing. He watched interview videos, he memorized answers, he practiced in front of the mirror. When he talked about leading projects, he sounded confident. When he explained his advanced Excel skills, he nodded seriously, like a man who definitely knew what a pivot table was. But something strange happened during practice. Every time he finished an answer, he felt a tight feeling in his chest, because deep down, Ethan knew something important. He hadn't just exaggerated, he had built an entire professional identity that didn't exist. Still, on the morning of the interview, he put on his best suit, fixed his hair, and looked at himself in the mirror. "Just stay calm," he said. "Answer confidently. Don't panic." The office building was tall and quiet. The receptionist smiled and asked him to wait. Ethan sat down, holding his folder like a shield. And as he waited, one terrifying thought kept repeating in his mind. What if they ask me to explain how I actually did the things I never did? The door opened. "Ethan?" a voice called. He stood up and walked straight toward the moment where lies and reality were about to meet. The interview room was smaller than Ethan expected. Too quiet, too clean. A glass table, 3 chairs, and a large screen on the wall that reflected his nervous face back at him. 2 interviewers walked in. One was Maya, calm, professional, with the kind of smile that made you feel safe, but also made you feel like she noticed everything. The other was Daniel, older, serious, the type who didn't waste time on small talk. They shook hands, polite, firm. "Please have a seat," Maya said. Ethan sat down and placed his folder neatly on the table, even though there was nothing inside he needed. His heart was beating loudly. He hoped they couldn't hear it. They started easy. "So, Ethan," Maya began, "tell us a little about yourself." This part he had practiced. He smiled, relaxed his shoulders, and spoke smoothly. He talked about his experience, his growth mindset, his passion for problem solving. He even made a small joke. Maya nodded. Daniel wrote something down. So far, so good. Then Daniel looked up from his notes. "I see here," he said, tapping the CV, "that you led several cross-functional projects. Can you walk us through one of them?" There it was. The sentence. The lie. Ethan swallowed. "Yes, of course," he said, buying time with confidence. "One project that stands out involved improving internal workflow efficiency." It sounded impressive. Vague, but impressive. Daniel leaned back. "Interesting. How many people were on your team?" Ethan hesitated. Half a second too long. 5, he said. 5 people from different departments." Maya smiled. "And what was your role as the leader?" Ethan nodded slowly, as if remembering something that never happened. He said, "I coordinated tasks, set deadlines, made sure communication was smooth." Daniel nodded again and wrote more notes. Then came the follow-up. "What challenges did you face during that project?" Daniel asked. This question hit hard because challenges require details, and details require truth. Ethan felt his mouth go dry. "Well," he said, "there were different working styles. Some team members were more flexible than others." Maya tilted her head slightly. "How did you handle that?" Ethan smiled, but it was weaker now. "I encouraged open communication. Regular check-ins helped align everyone." Silence. Daniel closed the folder gently. "All right, let's move on to technical skills." Ethan's stomach dropped. Maya turned her laptop toward him. "You mentioned advanced Excel skills. Could you explain how you usually use pivot tables in your reports?" Time slowed. Pivot tables. Ethan knew the word. He had seen it. He had avoided it. "Yes," he said quickly, too quickly. "Pivot tables are very useful." Maya waited. "They help organize data, efficiently." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Can you give an example? Let's say you have sales data across regions and months." Ethan stared at the screen. Numbers blurred together. In his head, his thoughts were screaming. Just say something, anything. "Well," he began, "I would first analyze the data." Maya nodded patiently. "And then?" "And then I would extract insights." Daniel leaned forward slightly. "What functions do you typically combine with pivot tables?" That was it. The moment the ground disappeared. Ethan opened his mouth, but no words came out. For the first time since the interview began, the silence felt heavy, uncomfortable, honest. Maya glanced at Daniel, then back at Ethan. "It's okay if you're not familiar with this," she said gently. "We value honesty." Ethan felt his face grow hot. He could lie again, invent something, keep pretending, or he could stop. He took a deep breath. "To be honest," he said, his voice low, "I may have overstated my experience." The room changed. Daniel's expression softened, not with approval, but with understanding. Maya closed the laptop. "Thank you for telling us," she said. Ethan nodded, embarrassed, relieved, and terrified all at the same time. He knew the interview wasn't going well anymore, but for the first time that day, he was telling the truth. And now there was no turning back. The interview ended politely. There was no dramatic ending, no angry words, no lectures. Just a few final questions, a short explanation of next steps, and a calm handshake. "Thank you for coming in, Ethan," Maya said warmly. "Yes, thank you," Daniel added. "We appreciate your time." Ethan smiled, nodded, and walked out of the room. The moment the elevator doors closed, his shoulders dropped. The confidence he had worn like armor all morning fell off instantly. He stared at his reflection in the metal walls and let out a long breath he felt like he had been holding for weeks. He already knew the outcome. People often say, "At least you tried," but Ethan didn't feel brave, he felt exposed. On the way home, every moment of the interview replayed in his head. The hesitation, the silence, the question about pivot tables that ended everything. But strangely, something else replayed too. That moment when he told the truth. For the first time, the interviewers stopped pushing, the pressure disappeared, the room felt human again. 2 days later, the email arrived. Subject: interview feedback. Ethan didn't open it right away. He made coffee, sat down, prepared himself. The message was short and respectful. They thanked him for his time. They explained that his skills didn't match the role requirements. They encouraged him to apply again in the future once he had more experience. Rejection. Clean, professional, final. Ethan closed his laptop and sat in silence. Then something unexpected happened. He laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was obvious. He had tried to skip steps. He had tried to sound ready instead of becoming ready. That evening, he opened his CV again. This time, he didn't exaggerate, he didn't decorate, he didn't pretend. He rewrote it honestly. Basic Excel skills, assisted with reports, supported team projects. It didn't look impressive, but it was real. Then he did something smarter than lying ever was. He enrolled in an online Excel course. He volunteered to help with real projects at work. He asked questions instead of avoiding them. Weeks passed, then months. Slowly, basic became comfortable. Assisted became handled. And one day, without forcing it, advanced actually made sense. Another interview came. A different company, a different role. This time, when they asked questions, Ethan didn't rush. He didn't impress. He explained. And when he didn't know something, he said so. The interview felt easier, lighter, real. And yes, this time, he got the job. So what's the lesson here? A CV can open a door, but it can't hold a conversation. Confidence can get you in the room, but only honesty keeps you there. Lying on your CV isn't just risky, it's exhausting. Because sooner or later, someone will ask, "Can you show me how you did that?" And when that moment comes, the truth is either your enemy or your strongest ally. Ethan learned that the hard way. But maybe you don't have to.
Right, Rebecca. Now I see that after graduating from university, your first job was...
For a local paper in York called the York Herald. Actually, I started with them as an intern. I was really keen on getting some experience in journalism, and this seemed like a good first step.
Certainly. And after your internship?
They seemed impressed and offered me a position as a junior local news reporter. I ended up staying 2 years there, actually. I was in charge of the sports news section of the newspaper. I really enjoyed it there, and it really helped me build my skills.
Yes, I see. But you decided to leave them in 2006, right?
Yes, that's right. My husband and I moved to London, and so I managed to find a position with a national newspaper based in London.
The London Weekly, right?
Yes, in some ways it was a step down from my previous job, but it did offer me much better prospects for the future.
All right, so talking about internships and interns, it seems that usually they get, it's not very exciting to become an intern because it ends up that the office people just make you, make coffee or copies and stuff like that. You're not really gaining much work experience.
That is the reputation in the United States for internships. So basically, when you agree to do an internship, sometimes you have to apply to do an internship. Mm-hmm. It's a very long process. You end up, like you say, making coffee for people or photocopying reports. And this is really boring work.
Right. I think, that is the reputation that many places have, like you say, in the United States. But also, I don't know, I guess it does seem, in a way, the only opportunity in order to be able to get into an industry or a company. Maybe it's a really good company, like, I don't know, like Procter & Gamble. Mm-hmm. And how else are you going to be able to get in there with no job experience?
Well, that's right. And a lot of people know that an internship doesn't really give you work experience, but they'd still give it, they still think that it gives you some edge or some advantage when you're looking for jobs later. Because if I write down on my resume, we were talking earlier about resumes. Mm-hmm. If I write down on my resume that I was an intern at Procter & Gamble, wow, that's really impressive.
Right, it looks good. Mm-hmm. All right, so this is an interesting topic. Let us know if you were ever an intern. Maybe you started out as an internship, or maybe you're doing one now.
Was it better than we say? Did you do anything else other than making coffee? We really hope so, and we look forward to hearing about your experiences.
All right, we'll see everyone at EnglishPod.com, and until next time.
Bye.
Bye. The English Pod Audio Review. Listen to the meaning, then say the vocabulary word.
Turned out or result in. End up. Be responsible for. In charge of. Be able to. Manage to. A decrease or reduction in size or amount. Step down. A mental picture of something to come. Prospect.
Let's try that faster.
Be responsible for. In charge of. A mental picture of something to come. Prospect. Turned out or result in. End up. Be able to. Manage to. A decrease or reduction in size or amount. Step down.
Now say the word and hear it in a sentence.
End up. If you don't start driving more carefully, you're going to end up in an accident. End up. We had meetings with several different suppliers, and we ended up choosing Acme because of their excellent customer service. End up. Which country do you think will end up winning the FIFA World Cup 2010? In charge of. This is Elizabeth. She is in charge of our Chilean customer accounts. In charge of. Annie, we would like to put you in charge of this project. In charge of. Roberta has been in charge of the sales department for 3 years now. Manage to. It was difficult to keep a straight face, but I managed not to laugh. Manage to. I have so many things to do this week. I don't know how I'll manage to get through them all. Manage to. It's almost impossible to get weekend tickets to the Shanghai World Expo now, but Ben managed to get a pair. Step down. After the scandal hit the news, Mr. Williams decided to step down as mayor. Step down. Going from corporate CFO to working at a startup may seem like a step down to some, but Jackie is excited about the change. Step down. Bill Gates stepped down as CEO of Microsoft in 2000 to devote more time to creating software. Prospect. The prospect of living and working abroad is very appealing. Prospect. Your son has been accepted to 4 different universities. Wow, he has so many prospects open to him. Prospect. It's true, Q3 was rough, but I think our prospects look very good for the rest of the year.